Welcome to Built for This, the podcast where property meets purpose. I'm Talia Hugh.
And I'm Megan Rovers. Together we're here to unpack the real stories behind the people shaping the property industry. From bold first steps to career-defining moments and the life lessons they've built along the way.
If you're passionate about property, curious about the human side of success, or just looking to build something meaningful, you're in the right place.
So let's unpack it. Welcome to Built for This.
Gosh, Scott, can you believe that this on our rerun, I was like on my bloody deathbed. I was like, Talia, I can't do it.
Seriously. And even this morning I woke up and I'm a little bit sick and I'm like, nope, get through it. It's fine. This is not happening. Oh, thank you for being so patient.
Sorry for you too, you poor buggers.
No, thank you. Because it's funny because you're actually our first remote guest and I'm just like, oh my God. So thanks for your patience because we do not know what we're doing. We've booked the library today. So
we're in the library. Hopefully the internet is stable here.
I love the sound deadening walls behind you.
Well, we had the green screen and we were like, not sure how that's going to work. So anyway, we're sitting in the corner, all cozy.
We started a podcast when we first started Comio and it was during COVID. And I've got a studio in my house. It's all like beautifully acoustically treated and all that. And the guy that works with me didn't. So we built this pillow fort all around him. And there's these amazing photos of like this wall of pillows as we try and deaden all the audio. It was so good. So you're doing better than we did.
That is so good. Oh, well, welcome back to the podcast, Scott. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can we start? Yes, thank you. Can we start off? Take us back. We sort of would love to go into your, of course, professional career, but take us back. Where did everything begin for you?
For me personally or for Comio? Where do you want to start? Because that's a long one.
Yes, I was going to say, I do know from your chats with Locke in the past, there is a lot of personal stuff. So up to you whether you go into all of that, but would just love to hear about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I guess I sort of think about my story as starting when I left home, and I left home in less than ideal circumstances. I was kicked out of home and kicked out of school when I was 15. I spent a couple of years effectively just sort of couch surfing with nowhere to live and trying to ask friends if I could sleep on the couch and all that sort of stuff, whilst I sort of fell into an apprenticeship as a chef. So started my professional life at kind of 15, working in some pretty brutal kitchens, doing 100 hours a week. And, this is back in the mid-90s where there was none of the regulation that there is today. I think I was earning $4 an hour. There's no overtime. There's no sick pay.
I'd take you as a chef for $4.
It was, I'm telling you, it was brutal. Like you're getting beaten up in the kitchen. It was all the horror stories you'd hear from back then. That was real. But I was desperate. So I did that for a few years. And then while I was doing that, I was working with a guy who was also a chef. And then one day he left and he went to Harvey Norman and started earning twice as much as what I was for doing a third of the work. I'm like, oh my God, my dream job is to work at Harvey Norman. So eventually when I moved to Melbourne, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get out of cooking. I'll find my way into retail. And I literally picked up a phone book and I called every single store in Melbourne until someone eventually gave me a job. And I did that for a little while. At the time I was doing that, I was DJing and running raves and festivals and all this kind of nonsense. And I thought, well, I've got to get out of this whole weekend thing so that I can focus more on touring and being available for gigs. So I took a job in a call center at an insurance company, thinking it would just be something kind of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, didn't really care. And then it was, as I kind of met my now wife, I fell in love with her at the call center, started to realize there was a bigger, better life than just partying every weekend and carrying on. Started to get some opportunities in the call center for a little bit of advancement, and suddenly found myself kind of wrestling with this decision of, do I double down on music and spend the rest of my life DJing, or do I try and have a crack at a more corporate career? And I was at this gig where the DJ was in his 50s and I was watching him and I was watching the kids and I'm like, oh, this is feeling like not something I want to do that late in life. I might just sort of double down on the corporate side. And then luckily for me, that took off. I moved up through a few different roles in that business. At the time, Westpac was trying to build insurance into their business and they were my client. So I went to work for them to build out insurance across their retail network. I moved from the insurance side into the retail banking side. Eventually, I got picked up as part of like a senior leadership development program. So they paid for my MBA and a whole bunch of study, which for me at the time was just extraordinary because at that point, my education was literally year 10, horrible imposter syndrome. Every meeting you're in, everyone else is smarter than you. That's what you wrestle with.
Mm.
And in doing the study, I sort of found myself and found a bunch of confidence. A headhunter came along one day and said, this very wealthy man has bought a real estate business and he wants to change the world. Do you want to come and join him? And at first I sort of fought it and thought, my God, no. And then eventually he convinced me, well, you think you're so smart, go and help him fix it. And I did think I was so smart, so I did go and help him fix it. And I mucked up everything and got it all wrong at first before we eventually kind of worked out what works and what doesn't. But it was a pretty humbling process to go through. And that kind of brings us through to today, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess personally, it sounds like, I guess from a property journey type of thing, it sounds like it was a little bit of a rough start for you out of home at
Oh,
15. Like, how is your relationship with property, I guess, different now to what it was back then? And it has, how do you think that's shaped the way you look at property?
it's a really good question. It did early in that I had nothing but bad experiences. So
Mm.
first of all, housing insecurity, which is rough. No matter what you do, it's rough. And then the properties that I was getting when I was a tenant were terrible. My experiences with property managers were terrible, like just consistently bad. And in fact, even like recently, when we could afford property and everything else, we thought, well, we'll rent vest. So we went back to being tenants, even though we
Mm.
owned investment properties, and that was terrible. So it was a reminder that this thing is still really bad. It doesn't matter
Mm.
if what you're renting is $100 a week or $1,200 a week. It's still a very complex, very broken kind of model all too often. But we became landlords and very deliberately went looking for disadvantaged people that we think would get told no elsewhere as our tenants, with the view that we can grow this asset and help people at the same time. They don't need to be mutually exclusive. But even then, like as a landlord trying to do the right thing, COVID hit, and we had this leak in the property, and the tenant's like, "Oh, there's mold appearing." I'm like, "Well, we want to fix that for you. Let's send
Mm.
someone out." She's like, "It's COVID. I'm paranoid. I'll get sick. I can't have someone in the property." So for nearly 12 months, we had this water leak causing all this damage, and she refused to let us in. So we're in this like rock and a hard place where you're going,
Mm.
I know this is getting worse. What can I do to help you? And she just didn't want us there. So you sort of sit there going, my goodness, this is so hard. Doesn't matter what we do here. This is so hard.
Yeah, we recently had a financial advisor chatting to us about property, and like it's an amazing asset class to a certain degree because some people see it as investment, they're making money off it. But for a lot of people, it's home. Like it's
Yeah.
the security, as you said, it's the shelter. And how, as a landlord, and I think he mentioned that maybe younger generations now are kind of steering away from property because they're like, well, we don't want to be dictating whether someone gets a house or not. We have this kind of social responsibility in a role as a rental provider now to make sure you're doing the right thing. But even like you've alluded to, like sometimes you can be doing all the right things, but still, things are outside of your, I guess, control. Colmio, talk to me about that. Like this just sounds like an amazing amount of work, effort, and it sounds like it's come from a really great place of you've identified the consumer experience and you've tried to build something, or you have built something, not tried, you have built something that is super powerful around it. Give us your wrap on what is it?
So Colmio is, I guess, Colmio is the answer that we bring to the question of what would need to be true that property management and renting properties goes from being something you only do because you have to something everyone actually really enjoys. We sort of stood back and said, of all the things that are going wrong, what would need to be true that a person only ever wants to rent because the rental experience is a great one? And we sort of started with a very tenant centric view of the world. And what we find, though, is that you can't actually solve the stuff for the tenant in isolation.
Mm.
You've got to be simultaneously thinking about what it means to the owner of the property. Otherwise, you don't have enough of them participating in the process. We looked at the real estate businesses and said, why is it so broken? And when you really start to do like a root cause analysis, increasingly you will find that these businesses aren't making money on property management. When it's not a key part of where your cash comes from, it's not a priority. And then when it's not particularly profitable, there's not a lot of cash there to invest or inject into doing the things that might improve it. So it's kind of this really complex thing where there's no simple answer. So Colmio is the Finnish word for triangle, and our view of the world is there are three sides that need to be in balance, hence the reference. We have to do things that improve life for the owner. We have to do things that make the property management business a better business in aid of making this a better experience for the tenant. So it's a, first and foremost, property management software product. So if you run a property management business, you do kind of everything on Colmio, from pushing it up to the portals to get tenants, coordinating maintenance, managing money, literally everything in between. And then separately, there's the newer part of Colmio that we call Colmio Plus, which is effectively a services ecosystem that's designed to make your life as a renter or a property owner a much more improved sort of experience of being in the home. So we bring to life a whole bunch of different services, and we do a whole lot of work around data analysis and prediction and all this kind of stuff to work out what you might need, even before you know you need it in some cases, to help make that experience a better one. So this is things like, if you're moving between properties, we might be sort of looking at how we can help you coordinate removalists or storage, transfer utilities for you. And increasingly, as we get more data savvy, predict things like whether the fridge from the old house will actually fit the cavity in the new house and let you know if not. So it's this constant process of saying, like, how do we just keep making this feel like an experience that you want to be in rather than you have to be in?
Amazing. And the idea of Colmio, talk about, where did that come from? I know you were working with a large real estate business, is that correct? How did you essentially build Colmio, and how long's it been around?
So there's a few parts to the sort of genesis of it. When I joined Paul Little's real estate business, as I said at the start, I came in full of arrogance, thinking I could solve the world's problems, and found I couldn't. And in large part, that was because I thought property management was an industry in which people just don't care. And what I found really quickly, amazing people that deeply, deeply care, that were just being set up to fail. If you give someone 150 properties to manage, you've got 2 tenants, you've got 2 owners, so call it 300 humans that are kind of looking to you to do these things. That is an enormous amount of work in the absence of a whole bunch of systems to make that sort of easy and seamless and manageable. It's separately highly emotionally charged. So, like you're typically involved when something has gone wrong, in some cases horribly wrong, something's broken or someone's not paying rent, whatever it might be. So we kind of put people into this situation without the tools, without the support, without the normal things that you'd expect to set that up to do well, and then think it will. So when I got to Paul's business, we said, well, what have we got to solve so that part is largely a well-oiled machine? And we wanted to kind of remove all the variability out of the service. Like, a great PM is always going to be a great PM. The problem is not every PM is. And if you kind of look at a bell curve, there's a whole section that are just very normal people doing an okay job. So we're saying, how do we make them as good as the rest? So the first part of Colmio was very much a response to what we were seeing in his property management business. Separately, we got invited to pitch for this huge build-to-rent development that was up on the Gold Coast maybe 8 years ago. And we'd never done build-to-rent. It was the first build-to-rent development in Australia. And I think it was about 1,250 apartments. So a huge, huge exercise. And we're like, well, we're the biggest property management company in the country. We've got all these resources. Surely we're the best for this. And we put our hat in the ring. And as part of a global search, we actually got down to the final 2, ultimately losing to JLL, who had a huge build-to-rent arm all over the world. Through that process, I went to the States. I went and saw the build-to-rent developments over there. And I came back like starry-eyed going, oh my God, this is so much better than what tenants get in Australia. If this comes here, real estate in Australia is cooked, because it won't be long before tenants expect that level of experience from every other rental, because we see in all industries that's what happens. As soon as someone experiences this better version, that becomes the standard rather than the delightful experience. So we're kind of looking at all of the ways that build to rent development businesses make that experience feel like you're cared for and you matter. They want to keep you renting for really long periods of time. And we literally just copied it. We said, what are all the things we can steal? And that became the Colmio Plus story around services and so on. So you've got lessons learned trying to fix property management, lessons learned through inspiration around how to create a great experience. That formed the original vision for what we decided to build. So we started that in 2020. We went to the board and I think I had 6 business plans that got shot down by Paul Little before we got the one that actually got approved. And we got it approved 8 weeks before COVID hit. So literally, we're so excited. We've got this money in the bank to recruit all these people and build this dream product that I've been losing sleep for 2 years dreaming about. And then we went straight into the pandemic, and it was just savage, like absolutely savage. Team of 140-ish we got to at the time. Most didn't really know each other. And then we were in this race against time because the old software that our customers were on was being shut down. And we had to find a way to get them off that, even though our product wasn't ready. So we created a nightmare for our customers, a nightmare for our team. We're sitting there just saying, like, you need to know we're good people. We don't want to do this to you. It was so horrible. And then we'd get on the Reddit forums and just watch people hating us. People had pinatas. They were going to public parks to bash pinatas of Comio.
No.
And we just, it was horrible. We're just like, if only you knew how much we actually care about you and what we are trying to do, but you've just got to try and fight through it and eventually prove that that's why you exist. So it's been a wild ride.
Oh my goodness.
I love that it is being built on lessons learned, because I feel like there's so many times where something gets brought into an industry because people who are experts at that think that they can build something for an industry, and then it just doesn't work. Like, it just does not mesh well, because you've essentially kind of how, like, I started the business this year, was like, well, what is wrong with the client experience? What needs to change? And then let's build something around that. The challenging bit is you've got to accept a little bit of feedback, because you're trying to do things that are different to what people are used to, but also just like completely putting yourself out there saying, hey, we're going to have to fail fast here, because this is not, there's no plan to a certain degree. There's not proven success record. I'm just out here, one, having a go, but also just like, I'm learning from the lessons that you're helping me learn. But how do you explain that to someone in the nicest way possible? Yeah.
It's so hard. And it's funny, like my, how do I explain this? The people that are like me, as in the ex-bankers and people that go into MBAs and all sort of nonsense, through that process, you become so convinced that you've got the answers to this very, archaic, broken real estate industry. And I've watched every single person like me come in with the same set of biases, the same assumptions that I had. And unfortunately, not everyone has that kind of humbling moment where you go, actually, I'm completely wrong. And a lot of them keep charging ahead. And you see this, the tech companies in particular, they start up, they burn out and they fizzle away because they're so convinced that it's like this, really easy to solve thing where the people are just not trying hard enough or not doing a good job or they're stupid or whatever. And it's not until you realize, no, this is actually just unbelievably complex. And if you don't accept that, you will fail. And I think, to your point, part of that challenge of any new business is, like, in starting a business, you are essentially making the case that others are doing things wrong and therefore there's a reason to do something differently. But it's got to be similar enough that the customers who are using those products are comfortable choosing you. So you've got to be different, but not so different that you alienate the people that you need to come across to you. That's super, super hard, all while not running out of money, which makes it even harder.
Yeah, and it sounds like the race for time also added an extra layer onto that for you. How big is your team now?
We're at 96 at the moment. So we spooled up quite large to close the gap on competition and get the product sort of broad enough that we weren't causing customers any headaches. That moment kind of hit about 18 months ago. So now we've just started to normalise it a little bit. And then I think over the next sort of while, we'll have to stand back and say, do we think we're the right size for the next few years? But for the moment, I think that's probably about right.
And how have you found, I guess, hiring for all those different roles? Like, of course, do you feel like you always want to, I guess, take control of things, or are you really good at letting things go and having the people come in and who specialise in that? Like, how have you gone building your team?
Oh, Tuz, I'm pretty lucky. They're all smarter than me. So I'd be a bit of a twit if I walked in and I'm like, do this my way. I think the number one lesson that I learned, and again, it was pretty humbling, is that when we were first starting, I kind of got caught up in this idea that you want to build, the really cool tech startup and you want all these creative, brilliant people. And when you're with people like that, it's amazing. Like you sort of sit there in awe going, I can't believe you guys just made this thing that 10 minutes ago was an idea in my mind and now I can see it's real and working. Like, it's really rewarding. The problem was, because we had to replace a product people already knew and we were in a race against time, what we should have done was recruited people that just wanted to be told what to build and then get out of their way while they built it. What I did do, which was wrong, is recruit a bunch of brilliant creative people that don't work like that. They want you to give them the problem to solve and then give them the space to work out the 10 different ways it could be solved, do the research, experiment, ideate, iterate, like this whole kind of tech thing. So they're very different skills for very different cultures, and I picked the wrong one. And what it meant was we had a whole bunch of creative, brilliant people where we drove them crazy because they came in thinking they could innovate and be creative. And then all we did was say, no, here's the 15 features that you've got to build. This button has to work like this. And it was terrible, like really damaging for them, really damaging for us. But just one of those things, like I'd never built a tech company, so I didn't know. Unfortunately, a lesson learned.
And I'm just going to jump in there and say, like, recently you won a huge award. Is it Tech Leader of the Year? Property Tech?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm... Yeah? Am I right?
It is. Yeah.
And a huge congratulations to you because, like you just said, from someone that's not in the tech world to win an award like that, like, what does that mean to you? How did that come about?
I'm still a bit embarrassed by it, to be honest. I sort of struggle with it. I think I'm really honoured, and I mean that very sincerely. So the PropTech Association do a remarkable job, a lot like sort of the REIVs and the REIs do across real estate. Each year they have this wonderful set of awards. For the last few years, my team had sort of said, we want to put you up for this Leader of the Year award. And I said no. And the reason I kept saying no is because we were still trying to struggle through some stuff for our customers. I said, it feels really insensitive that they're frustrated by some of the things we haven't got right. Meanwhile, we're trying to put me up in lights as this great leader. It just didn't sit right. And then this year, one of my executive team convinced me that it's not about you per se. Like, this is also about the team and them wanting to kind of recognise in the same way. So I actually just sort of conceded and didn't think anything of it. I went, well, if you want to do it, put it up, that's fine. And then when I saw I'd been a finalist and I saw the list of people who was a finalist, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in an amazing company. I'm really thrilled. I was really pleased. And I just thought that was it. And then I got to the awards night in Sydney. I was horribly sick, like literally ready to curl over and die sick. So I've loaded up on all this Codral and turned up to this thing. And they're sort of making us stand up while they read out the nominees. And I'm literally not even paying attention. And then my name gets read out, and one of my team's next to me screaming at me, and I'm kind of like, oh, shit. So I had not prepared anything, and they're like, oh, you should prepare something just in case. I didn't even bother. I was just so convinced that I was there just to participate and all of that. So I was terribly sick, terribly embarrassed, but really honoured as well. Like, it was a really special thing, and I felt really grateful.
Amazing. And you sound so humble, but for your team to really recognise that you are an amazing leader, congratulations, well deserved.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. They're an amazing group of people, and honestly, I don't do that much. I just get to look good on the back of their hard work.
But I just wanted to, I guess, dive into this a little bit deeper with you, because maybe that's why you are such a good leader, because you don't think you can do what they do. You don't think that, you just said, like, it sounds like you're just letting them do what they do best, and you're there, and I can just tell you're oozing with passion, that you're just probably, in the background just going, keep going, great job. What do you think makes you a good leader? And I know that by the sounds of it, doesn't seem like you want to be, tooting your own horn or anything, but I'm asking you, please, for the people that are listening, like, what do you think differentiates you, and why do you think your team think you're a good leader?
Let me sort of say this. I think I have grown as a leader enormously, in large part, thanks to two things. When I did my MBA, I got to work with some amazing people, both that I'd study with and great professors. And then I was fortunate to get into this thing at Harvard a few years ago, and it really did change me as a person, and it changes the way you think about leadership. And there were these couple of really interesting quotes, and it's so silly, like one quote can change your view of the world. But one that a professor made, he said, your leadership is not measured by how people feel about you when they're with you. Leadership is measured by how they feel about themselves when they're with you. And it really stuck with me, because I had to come to terms with the fact that for so long, I would judge myself as a leader by what do people think of me when they're with me. And as a consequence, I'd want to, set the vision and inspire and do all these things that you're taught to do, but it was all about me. And that was the moment where I went, well, actually, no, do you feel better? Do you feel confident? Do you feel like you've got clarity? And are you feeling like, I've given you everything you need for you to just go off and, prosecute this mission that you've got, knowing that you're probably going to be successful. If not, I've got your back no matter what. So I think that was a real turning point where my leadership style changed, my understanding of my people changed, and it was literally just that one quote that sort of caused me to rethink, what is the impact that I'm here to have on people, rather than do people think that I'm a good speaker or inspirational or whatever.
I feel like in a world now where there's just so much information out there, it is like so simple. Like you said, it's just one quote. And sometimes it's just like one person. You can read, 4 or 5 different books or listen to 4 or 5 different podcasts, and you can take a little bit from each one of those. But sometimes it is just one thing that you just go, hang on a minute, it is actually as simple as that. If I just keep that at the core and don't overcomplicate things, because I kind of see too often businesses or leaders that overcomplicate things, and sometimes if you do that, then nothing gets done. Like if it seems like it's just like this big project or overcomplicated, then nothing gets done. You just stagnate. I'm interested, being in the real estate industry, both of us, about the tech in real estate at the moment. I want to dive into a little bit about AI, your opinion. How's it helping? How's it hindering? What's coming? What do you think is coming for us?
It's so honestly so wild. I'm giving a talk in Queensland in 2 weeks, and the kind of opening comment that I'm going to make as part of that talk is that there is a wave of change coming that genuinely has no reference point in human history. And I mean, like, it's significant to agree that most of us can't fully comprehend what's about to happen. So right now, we've got this really interesting industry where most of us, to some extent, are being augmented. So what I mean by that is there is some degree of AI in some of the workflows and the products you might work with. Most of us are using, products like ChatGPT or something similar. You might be using products like PropTech or Reader to do some lead gen. So there's AI kind of at the edges, at the periphery, that's just kind of making us that little bit sharper, smarter, whatever. There is a company that I got introduced to, funnily enough, when I was at Harvard, and I went there and I was pitching Colmio to my professors, this lab that I was working with. And he said, "Who are you inspired by?" I said, "Amazon." He said, "I'll show you something that'll rock your world. It's, way better than Amazon." And it was a Chinese financial services company called Ant. And Ant is the most AI out organization in the world, or it was at the time. And what that means is that Ant kind of grew up in this world where rural Chinese can't afford banking. So the only way to bank them is to do it with AI, because you can do it at next to no cost. So a home loan, a loan, could take like 2 minutes to apply for. No human is involved in the process, fully approved, funded in minutes, and they have a 99.9% success rate. So like the credit scoring is off the charts compared to a human. They have 1.3 billion customers for about 15,000 staff. So a 1 to 80,000 employee to customer ratio. An Australian bank is 1 to 50. So it's 1,600 times more efficient. And this is a difference between a business that is kind of AI at the edges, like Westpac, that uses AI for fraud detection or whatever, versus a business that at its core is a set of algorithms on top of which we add experiences. Real estate is going to have that moment. Like, the whole shift is happening in large part because of agentic AI. And what we're seeing at the moment is that agentic AI, which is a bit different. Are you guys familiar with that term?
No.
Right.
No.
So AI is a bit different, and the word is given away by the word agent, so we give it agency. If you think about ChatGPT, unless you tell it what to do, it does nothing. You can go to it, you can prompt it, give me a poem or whatever, it'll produce it. But in the absence of that instruction, it doesn't do anything. And agentic AI works a bit differently in that you give it an objective to achieve, and it will work out what it needs to do to achieve that objective, even if to do that thing, it means it needs to use the internet, it needs to talk, it needs to listen, it needs to use other AIs because they're going to be more successful than it. So it stands back and plans and reasons and then does the steps until it's delivered that objective for you. So a lot of the corporates around the world now are increasingly saying this gets rid of people. So in the past, we've said you won't lose your job to AI, you might lose your job to someone using AI. Now that is not true. In some jobs, that will be the case, but in many, we're now saying, what would you end up doing that you could do better than these products could do if your job is mostly being at a computer working on the internet? Now, the barrier is at the moment, these products, these agentic AIs, are better than humans as long as the task takes 2 hours or less to do. So that's good news. The problem is that time is doubling every 7 months. So in 14 months, there is nothing you or I could do better than it in a normal human working day, and it could do it for cents per hour compared to whatever we would cost a company to operate at. So it's this wild, wild shift. And you get people that say, oh, but like realistically, what would people do who are really going to do that? The problem is the only evidence we have across history is every time the machine can do it at a fraction of the cost, we get rid of people. So 200 years ago, we had an agricultural economy. Eventually, we started to find people in Africa and India. We gave the jobs to them. Then we invent tractors. Tractors do the job for 1/100th the cost. We get rid of all the people and we use machines. Then we have a manufacturing economy. We make all this stuff. We don't like making it, so we go to China and Thailand. We get other people to make it for us. Then we invent automated machines that do it for 1/100th the cost. We get rid of the people. We're in a services economy now. We don't like doing it, so we go to the Philippines and India, find people to do it for us. Well, we've now got machines that do it at 1/1000th the cost. What do you suppose happens looking at our pattern, looking at history, and the pace at which this will change? So there's a huge change coming, because whether you want to do these things or not, if you're in a market with 10 competitors and 3 do, how do the other 7 survive with a 90% difference in cost to trade? Like it's quite scary.
Yeah.
Seriously.
How quick do you think this is going to happen? Like, I'm just kind of sitting here going, for someone like yourself in the tech world, it's either almost keep up or get out. And it's almost like you've alluded to with even us owning businesses. Like, we feel like we're trying to embrace it as quick as we possibly can. But do you think this is like, because it is probably the fastest change, do you think this is like 12 months, 3 years? What's your prediction?
I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know. Yeah, honestly, like part of when we look at Colmio, that's probably all I can talk to is what are we doing as a consequence? The testing that we are doing with some of these technologies, so we're doing 2 things. We're saying in the experiments that we do, how capable are we seeing these technologies? And we built one of these just recently to test how it would manage maintenance end to end in a tenancy. And we stood back just going, oh my God, that's scarily good. Like no human involvement, coordinates with trades, checks legislation, does the whole bit. And then we said, if you could deploy AI to the full gamut of what a PM does, how much of their work would the PM still need to do? And as we think about ratios, like how many properties per property manager, our estimate is that 2 years from now, you could have 1 senior person and 1 junior person for every 1,500 or so properties. You would have someone that still goes out to the property to do leasing, or if you do inspections in person, to do that. But the in-office work, you would go from having 7 or 8 people to 1.5. So that's 2 years from now. So who knows? I could be off by 50%. It's still a pretty big shift.
Why do you think those people can't be replaced? What do you think that can't be done in terms of obviously 1 to 1,500? What's that person doing?
We still believe, like, there's a few beliefs we hold. One is you should always have a human in the loop. Like, I use the example of a pilot. Pilots don't do anything in the plane. Like 99.98% of the time that a plane is in flight, the pilot does nothing to fly the plane. They are there to oversee. They're there just in case. But there is not a single thing the autopilot does that the pilot can't step in and do if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. So I think about it like that, where we never quite know, will it go wrong? Will the AI get something wrong? And is there a person there who can still intervene, or actually just stand back and look at it and go, no, the AI is playing up, or it's not doing what we would expect. So you still need a person, even for nothing else but for that. And then ethically, I think it's appalling to think that an AI would make a decision to evict me. So I think there are some decisions that are fundamentally human and should remain human. So we kind of stand back and say, like, if you could just keep people focused on managing the team of AIs as they do their thing, sense checking, making sure quality's there, and then potentially dealing with some of the more emotionally charged or important decisions that go on in property management, let's make sure that the people are doing that stuff. Now, the big question that remains is, to what extent do you want to use people? Because the machines can do the stuff. But I've always sort of said, the machines are there to get things done. People are there to shape how people feel. So if this is still a people industry, and I believe it is, what do you get people doing such that you're having some real impact on the people that you serve, be it landlords, tenants, buyers, sellers, whatever it might be. And this creates capacity to do that, but we wouldn't have people doing the tasks that they've been doing in the past.
How interesting. And
Crazy.
yeah, because there's just, like my mind's going nuts with all the things, like even just in the whole property. Because I've even seen, like, you know, they've started using machines to now build houses, and it's kind of like we just don't know where it's going. And you're 100% right. You just got to like stay so open minded with it. You've kind of throughout the chat, you've been very reflective of the lessons you've learned and those types of things. And I love that hearing it from a leader, being able to kind of look back. When do you think? And do you think you've had a moment in your life where you've gone, I've made it, like this is success? Like it sounds like, and it's a weird question to ask, but I just know that so many times that when you're always chasing something and there's just so many more opportunities out there, it sounds like there's just, with your company, there's just going to be so much opportunity still moving forward and you're in the right space for it. When have you felt that, yeah, no, I'm successful, you've come from, as you said, not being the smartest person in the room, all those types of things? Maybe just answer the question instead of me keep getting excited about asking the question.
It's an awesome question. I'll give you two answers. One answer is that my sister has literally just texted me, caught my eye. I'm very sorry, because she's just got a job. She's been out of work. She's found a job. And this morning she was saying, I'm interviewing with the chief people officer of this company. I've never interviewed with the C-suite. And I'm trying to say to her, like, we're all just as, smart and dumb, confident and scared as everyone else. Forget the title. I promise you she's no different to you, because I get this all the time where people will sit with me and they think I'm something I'm not because of my title. And I'm like, it's not how it works. But I tell you the one moment that really did hit home for me, and it was pretty emotional. But when I was a young chef, I moved to Sydney because I was broke. And the guy that I was cooking for in country New South Wales asked me to go up to Sydney to fix his restaurant. And I got up there, I had no money, couldn't afford a car, and I'm in Blacktown, which is in this awful property in Sydney. And my first day at the kitchen, there was a thunderstorm. It's 3 kilometres from my home, and I had to walk to work. So I'm in Blacktown. I would have been, I don't know, maybe 16 and a half, not quite 17. And I walked in this thunderstorm, got to the kitchen my very first day there, and had to strip down to my underwear and put my clothes in the oven to dry them. And I'm leaning against this oven in tears, going, what the fuck have I done with my life? This is like so humiliating. Because I was shivering, freezing cold the whole bit. In my last week at Harvard, in my very final couple of days, I've been hearing about this burger store across the river. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and try this burger before I leave. And again, I'm walking through a thunderstorm, and I walk into this burger store and I'm dripping wet again. And I'm having that moment going, I cannot believe the last time I was sitting soaked like this. I'm 17, I'm crying, I'm depressed, did not know what life held. And at the time that I was doing this, I was 37, so it's 20 years later. I've just finished this incredible program at Harvard Business School. I'm going back to launch my dream company. How on earth has the arc of my life changed to the extent that it has? And I was in tears eating this burger, but for a very different reason. So I don't ever feel like I've made it, and I'm sure I never will, but it is the moment that I would point to and say, that was the time where I kind of had to take stock of how different life had become. And if I'd gone back to the 17-year-old me and said, this is what will happen, you could have bet me $1 billion and I wouldn't have taken the bet that there was any chance that that's where life would end up. So yeah, it was really a really special moment.
I love that so much. And I think as well, like to touch on, is there somewhere that you do get your, I guess, motivation or inspiration from, like on a day-to-day sort of, yeah.
What's your why?
Yeah, what is your why?
That's a good, I mean, like I'm really simple. When people sort of say to me, what makes you you and what are you looking to do? I love being around really smart people. I love doing really hard things. I want the work I do to make a difference, and I just want to have fun. So the things that we do have got to be fun. So I am fortunate to get to do all of that with brilliant people. And then I love when we sit with people and sort of talk about what we're doing with Comio and so on. Every single time we talk about it, someone goes away and says, I've just had this different idea, for what you could do when they hear the stories about, predicting what a tenant might want and how to make life better for them. And I love that because it means the work we are doing is influencing others to kind of share that vision. I'm fortunate to have the most amazing woman in the world to kind of build a life with. My wife is just extraordinary. She's a lot of fun and shares my ambition to just keep doing really hard things, which is great because it doesn't mean like I don't have to convince her to take on risk or do different stuff. So I guess I'm just really fortunate to be surrounded by great people who want to make a difference and want to do tough things. So, yeah.
I love that so much. And we follow each other on Instagram, and I just always see your guys' antics. And you said before you love wine. And I'm just like, Locke and I are like, we need to go. We need to check out his studio, his DJ stuff, and drink lots of wine and have fun.
Hey, the offer is there. We'll open something nice to celebrate your engagement, which we should be talking about.
Oh, I love it so much. And look, again, thank you so much for coming on today, and being so raw and just so open with us. I'm sure we've learned a lot, Megs. We'd love to finish off our episode with a few rapid fire questions. We usually just sort of chuck it on at you. Megs,
I'm going to open. Speaking of wine, red or white, if you could only drink one?
Red.
Love that.
Yes, that's me too. Love.
And specifically a right bank Bordeaux. So if we get really specific.
Okay, we love. Holiday destination, your go-to holiday destination.
Used to be the US because of sports. Not a fan of the US at the moment. It'd have to be somewhere in Europe in winter, maybe Switzerland.
Oh, beautiful.
How good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have absolutely loved the chat. We will put some details about your business in the notes for anyone that wants to follow along. Thank you so much.
I've loved it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Scott.